Welcome to our podcast, Shockers Learning Out Loud, where we talk about the fear, the excitement, the setbacks, and most importantly, the accomplishments that come along with being an adult learner.
That was your host, Dr. Pamela O'Neill, and I'm your co-host, Dr. Amber Anderson. And we are the Office of Online and Adult Learning. Although our department merge happened recently, Pam and I have been having fun collaborating for years. We have one goal at WSU, and that's to advocate for our online and adult learners. Our adult learners are working full-time jobs, caretaking for a family member, raising a family themselves, and involved in the community. So, needless to say, their time is limited. And we know that, and we feel you guys. Our office wants to advocate for your success. So, stay tuned for the voices of your adult learning peers as we unpack funny fails, inspiring wins, and mostly the adult learning experience.
With us today is Ashley Cervantes. Ashley, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Welcome, Ashley. Thank you. My name is Ashley Cervantes. I am the program director for the McNair Scholars Program. I've been with Wichita State. This will be 15 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been with McNair for 9.
Just FYI, Ashley looks like she's maybe 25.
I mean, the gray hair will beg to differ for you. But I appreciate it.
So, you and I have known each other for a long time now, right? When did we first cross paths, Ashley?
So I began my adult career journey at the Communication Upward Bound program in the Elliott School of Communication.
Where we are both, you graduated, you got your degree, right?
Mm-hmm. So my bachelor's is in strategic communications.
Right.
And I started working with Communication Upward Bound right after I graduated. Dr. Amy Lauder started the program. I was an undergraduate. She invited me to work as a student assistant. It turned into a professional position. And then we'll talk about TRIO a little bit, but I pretty much drank the TRIO Kool-Aid.
Yes. We have actually said that in our last podcast.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And so TRIO has just been, I was instantly passionate about it. And so that's kind of where I've spent my career. And I met you through TRIO. I know we're in the Elliott School of Communication, but I met you through TRIO. You worked for that first summer program?
Yes. I taught there and did a number of different things, whatever really kind of needed to be done, because I think a graduate student when I started working for TRIO. And real quickly, Ashley, I know a little bit about TRIO, but can you give us a little background about what TRIO is?
We have
and its history maybe here at Wichita State?
Sure. Yeah, I will try to do it justice. So TRIO doesn't stand for anything. That's a common misperception.
That is right.
It is called TRIO because originally there were 3 programs, and that kind of stuck. And so TRIO is a term for a bunch of federally funded programs. We serve students all the way from middle school through college. And the pre-college programs focus on the middle and high school students. And that's how I met you. That Communication Upward Bound is a pre-college program. So we work with high school students. And then there are Educational Opportunity Centers, works with returning adults.
Yes, we work with them a little bit. Yeah. Yep.
Veterans Upward Bound also works with some returning. They don't focus on returning adults. They focus on students who have served as veterans.
But I think that's a lot where we intersect there too, because most of the time, if you're a veteran, you're automatically, because you've served time, you're automatically a returning adult. So
Yeah, so those are pre-college programs. There's a talent search program. So TRIO has been at Wichita State for over 50 years through Upward Bound, through student support services, disability support services, and then the program I'm from, McNair Scholars Program. We're the 3 programs that serve college students at Wichita State, and we help them finish their path, right? The pre-college programs are all about access and how can we set students up to be successful to come into college. And then the college programs, we're working with students while we're here and helping them to be successful while they're here and then graduate.
Ashley, you have a
Great.
wealth of information
Yeah.
about TRIO, and I think you did it more than justice.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know, and we have a lot of programs here at Wichita State that are TRIO programs, right?
Mhm.
Do you know how many? Offhand?
I think we're up to 9. We're up to 9 programs.
Wow, that's great. And most generally, and correct me if I'm wrong, TRIO usually serves first generation and low income, or is it? Do I have that right?
So most of the programs serve first generation low income students. So first generation, as defined by the federal government, is neither parent has a 4-year degree. So some college, you are still
Right.
considered a first generation student. It's if if your parents have completed a 4-year degree. So that's first generation,
Mhm.
and then low income is defined by the federal poverty guidelines.
Are they first generation? We are.
Yes.
I am
Okay.
a first
Yeah.
You
generation
speak our
student.
language.
Yes, yeah. And thank you for kind of defining that, because one of the things that we try to do is define those words.
Abbreviations.
Yes, alphabet soup.
Because we assume everybody knows what they mean all the time.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
as a first generation student, that is just, you come here and you're learning, not only are you learning what the content, but you're also learning this new language, this new
Right.
way of life.
Mhm.
And so thank you for jumping in and defining terms that, you and I and Amber, we all know, but a lot of times our students don't. And
Correct.
so we try to demystify those abbreviations and everything. So thank you for that.
I'm going to sneak in a little bit more and talk about McNair
Sure.
eligibility.
Do it.
So
Yeah.
McNair eligibility, we serve students who are first generation low income, but then you can also be, for our program, we're a little unique. We also serve students who are just underrepresented in higher education. And so that is African American, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, Hawaiian Pacific Islander.
Nice. Thank you for that, because even, I've asked before, who are our underserved populations? And sometimes I forget, but it's important that we talk about that. And one of our adult learners, actually, I want to talk about her for a little bit. So Inika Vargas, if you're listening, this section's
out.
about this is about you. Can you talk a little bit about Inika and how you know her? And she was underrepresented. Am I wrong there?
Is she currently going to WSU?
No, she is.
Okay.
Where is she?
She is at Sam Houston State University in a clinical psychology program.
Nice.
She was in the program for, I think, 3 years. It might have been 4 years. I was trying to get her to graduate, and she was wanting to be ready. And so, so I think she was in the program for 4 years. She graduated and went into Sam Houston. This is her first year of study.
Nice. Yeah, I
Did
think
she-
so.
yeah, so
Yeah,
this is-
yeah.
This is her first year as a graduate student. She was a phenomenal student. So she came in. I always joke that, like, students are really shiny. They're really exciting when they come into the program, into McNair, because they know what to say and they come in.
Yeah.
It's like before they've disappointed you.
Yeah.
And like,
Oh my gosh, it's so real life. Thank you for saying
because
that.
we're students, right? And I mean,
Yes.
there are
Yeah.
times when you struggle and you fail, and like, I'm all about supporting students, but it's that first moment where you get really excited about somebody when they're coming in. And Inika was just a phenomenal student from the beginning to the end.
Right.
And she took full advantage of everything that we had to offer. She attended meetings. She came and met and did her advising meetings. She just threw herself into it. She took advantage of like every opportunity she had to do research and to get herself closer to where she wanted to go. She was great too because she knew when to say no. Like, so she
Yeah.
knew
That's
when to...
hard.
That's a good
Mhm.
boundary.
Yeah. And so she, like, we would joke that she put enough effort in to get herself to be successful, but if it wasn't worth her time, she wouldn't put any effort into it, which I think is important. It's
It
a
is
skill.
so important. I'm wondering if that's associated more with adult learners because they are balancing so much. They've learned to be more comfortable saying no.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I struggle to do.
Oh, I still do to this day. Yeah. Somebody probably should have, when we started this podcast, should have said no, Pam.
You guys stop.
No, but Inika, and I'm glad you said that, because it was our first Alati, and
Mhm.
Alati is the Adult Learner of the Year, and I
Mhm.
started these awards because I know how important it is to recognize students like Inika. And so not only was she part of the McNair Scholars Program, but she was our first Adult Learner of the Year recipient. And so always holds a special place in our hearts. You know, her name will forever probably be, I hope, associated with our offices.
How would you say your office works?
Yeah.
What is your experience working with students enrolled in an online program here at WSU, or just an adult learner, or both? Or are you mostly doing first year program student? Like, which kind of demographic do you usually see in your office?
So we recruit students. So we work with undergraduate students who meet our eligibility requirements. But beyond that, we want to see students who are interested and committed to a graduate degree program. So our ultimate goal for our students is to help them attain a doctoral degree. So everything we do is around preparing them for graduate study and
That's
specifically,
very cool.
doctoral education.
I think for myself, and I think Amber and I have talked about this, when I came into Wichita State, I had no idea. I don't even know if I knew a little bit about, okay, there are professors at college, but to me that was like in another life where I don't, it was just so out there. I didn't even think of a graduate degree.
Nope.
Did I know that you could get a master's and a doctorate? Yeah. Did I think I was able or something I wanted to do? Not at all.
Not particular. Yeah, it's not until the faculty talk to you and tell you, oh, you can do this. You should do this. You're really good at this. You should, apply for a graduate degree.
So when you're talking to our online learners or our adult learners, do you feel that? Or would you say they kind of know when they come in, or are they learning about you on the fly, or do you know how you're connecting with our students?
I think it's a little bit of both. So, we're talking about, like, you kind of led this whole thing about talking about terminology, right, and understanding of what things mean. I think there might be some peripheral knowledge about what graduate student or what graduate programs are, but really you don't, that's part of the first generation experience, and you're probably lucky if you meet some faculty member who's like, you should consider graduate study.
Right.
And so McNair, like, my hope is that we're kind of bridging that gap, right, where we're helping students explore and learn and know what this means anyways. A lot of the students that I get during the recruitment process, maybe they kind of have this idea of what graduate study is, but they don't know what the difference is between a master's program and a doctoral program. And so part of the conversation that we have is talking about what the difference is, what can you do with a master's degree versus a doctoral degree. And I might refer them to a faculty member because I'm not an expert in every field.
Sure.
I can't be that subject expert. So I know my students probably think, why is she telling me to talk to all these people?
We do the same thing, though. We're not the experts, but we know them. We can connect you to the experts for sure.
Yeah.
I know that I've encouraged some of our adult learners, many of them, to go talk to you. So let's just, for an instance, real quick, let's say someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, hey, that might be something I'm interested in. What do they do, Ashley?
So they can always come and see me and we'll talk about it. They can apply to be in the program. The website is wichita.edu/McNair. We're accepting applications right now. We'll accept applications through the end of March. We recruit now for participation in the fall. The time commitment to participate in McNair is about 4 to 5 hours in a month. It is a choice you're making. You're choosing to participate, but we don't have busy work. Everything we do is for a purpose. There's individual advising meetings that take up about 15 to 30 minutes in a week. So they're weekly meetings where you meet with a specific, success coach advisor to talk about individual goals. And then we have group meetings where we fill in the gap of knowledge. We talk about what does it look like to be in what is graduate study? What does that look like? How can you prepare right now as an undergraduate student to be competitive at that level? We bring in faculty to share their expertise and talk about what they look for in students. And so that's kind of the crux of the program. There's also a research component. We serve 28 students a year. Once you come into the program, you're here till you graduate, unless you withdraw from the program. And then, but 14 of those students every year we want to see do academic research through the program. So we help them pair with a faculty member. They design a research project so they get to do research in their field.
Yeah.
It's a great way to affirm if you're interested in
Right.
what you're studying.
Mhm.
And then at the end of that process, we make you work for it, but there's a $2,800 stipend at the end of that.
Wow. That's
yeah.
nice.
Yeah, so we're not there's a misconception sometimes where people see McNair Scholars Program and they think scholarship.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought it was.
Yeah, and so we're not a scholarship program. We don't have
Got
funds
you.
for our students, but through the research component is one way we do, have some funds that they go
Right.
directly to a student. We encourage them to save that to fund their graduate experiences,
Right.
but it's their money. It goes to them.
Very nice. So, I was thinking back to when somebody introduced me to graduate school or whatever it was. What are some of the research projects? Can you talk about that for a little bit? Just what that looks like and what is a research project?
So it can be anything. We have students from engineering to anthropology to political science. So we have a lot of psychology students.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really can be whatever you're interested in. I have had engineering.
You're not limited.
You're not limited.
Okay.
And we can brainstorm and you can talk to faculty. And really the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want to do. I had, let's see, some of the novel things that students have done in the past. I had a student look at like horse-human behavior, which is like how is that bonding experience between
Right.
a human and a horse. I think she
Oh,
was
very
looking
cool.
at like grooming, like different ways of grooming or times of grooming
Yeah.
and how that impacted horse behavior.
Huh.
That was a pretty early project in my tenure with McNair, but it's
That's
stuck
fun.
in my mind.
So one of the things that I never even thought about until I was taking a class as far as research goes, and it became my thesis, was childhood obesity.
Mhm.
And so I looked at media campaigns. And so even for someone like myself who is interested in more of the liberal arts,
Mhm.
you can do anything really. Like you
Mhm.
said, the sky's the limit as far as not communication, but as far as research projects go, would you
Mhm.
say?
Yep.
All right.
When I was an
Definitely.
undergrad, I did research with a professor in psychology, and it seems random to think about bonding with a horse through grooming. Interesting, right? But
Uh-huh.
when I think about my research, it was also kind of random too, because our study was based around the cold presser task.
The what?
And cold presser,
What's
task?
that?
where we would have participants come in and like see how long you could stick your arm into ice water, and the
Oh,
pain, and like how, like measuring pain tolerance through that and doing a whole research design around that. So that was kind of my first research topic. Not that I was interested
Right.
in threshold for pain, but it did teach me. I got to see how the studies went, how
Right.
we did the IRB, how we collected data,
Mhm.
and it was fun to see people, cringe
Right.
their arm in
Mhm.
Right.
ice cold water. Random, but kind of fun.
Real quick, IRB. Do you remember what that stands for? Amber, I'm putting her on the spot. Let's see if she gets this.
Internal research.
I believe, we can double check, but I believe it's the Institutional
Institutional
Review or Research
Review
Review Board.
Review board.
Yeah, and so that's just an internal office. Well, I think they're all over the United States, but you work with the IRB, right? A little bit, do you or no,
Mhm.
Ashley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's focused on ethics.
Okay.
And those
yes.
are some, like, that's another terminology that just, like, I have a lot of students that whole process of, like, all it is just making sure that your study isn't going to harm somebody.
Correct.
Right.
And so you go through this
Protecting the
process.
participants.
Yeah, you fill out an application, you demonstrate how your research is not going to do that. That can feel intimidating to kind of approach. But we support
can.
students through that process. Their mentors are there to support them through that process. The whole research experience through McNair is intended to give you experience with the process. Like, we are not expecting that our students are going to solve world hunger or, you know what I mean? Or like address some
Yes.
major
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
We want them to understand the process of research. And so
Yes.
whatever interest they have, they can design a study around that. And, we support them through the process.
Right.
And the IRB is helpful too. That it's not
Right.
that they want to be a Debbie Downer and say no to what you want to do. If they don't approve how or a piece of your study, they'll come back and give you alternative approaches, and they'll help you work through it to make sure your participants are safe.
Amber, I know that you had to do a little bit more on when you did your doctoral study. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that really helped you? I mean, because you looked at a certain population, and so can you speak to that a little bit?
So I did. When you do your research study, you do a proposal and you send that to the IRB, and then they review it and tell you what they think, if that's going to work and if that's ethical. And but for me, I was working with a vulnerable population. My dissertation was on undocumented Latinos pursuing higher education. So, they were particularly vulnerable. So it was hard to find them, and so we did have a couple extra meetings to touch base about how to go about handling this population and making sure that their their identities are protected at all costs, and they can quit anytime. And so we had a couple extra meetings,
and it can be scary, but here's the good thing, and I think this is what McNair Scholars do. They kind of prepare you for that, and know that should you go on to get that doctorate or whatever, you've already experienced that, and you know what it's there for, and you don't face that for the first time in a doctoral program or something like that, because that can almost be, you're like sitting there, just hoping your study gets approved, right? But if you've gone through it before and you've had help, it's a lot less intimidating. And so kudos to McNair for doing that, because that would have helped me, because I had to do my IRB for my doctoral program too. And while mine wasn't a vulnerable population, I still had to go through the process. And if I had done it before with someone else, maybe I wouldn't have been as scared, because it did feel like I was being judged, and that's not what's going on at all. No, they're there to help you.
And that's probably the biggest feedback that we get from our alumni, is just having that experience with the whole process, right? That's why we focus on the process, because maybe IRB is a challenge for you, but it could be the writing component that's a challenge for somebody else.
Right.
And so going through that whole process, the biggest thing our alumni say is like, I'm glad I did it as an undergrad, because now that I'm doing it as a graduate student, like I feel like I'm ahead of my peers.
Right.
Because I've faced these things before. And so that's, I think, a value that we bring to the students that we serve.
Great. So I will ask the question that I revised.
We had laid out questions for Ashley, but we revised them a little bit.
We tend to go off track and do circles and circle back. I guess one of my questions was, I know that you guys influence your students' lives a lot. I mean, obviously, with all the things that you do, but would you say that any of your students have changed your life?
Yeah, I think definitely. So I read that question and I'm like, it's hard to say it's hard for me to say this student in particular, because I think almost all of my students changed my perspective in some way. Because they're bringing different perspectives, they're bringing different experiences that are like maybe new to me. And so certainly I think my students, like going through this process, being a McNair Scholar, being with McNair Scholars, even with my upper bound students, they show you a different part of life that as humans, we kind of go through our own experiences.
Sure. Right.
And I feel like I'm in a great position to be able to see a bunch of different perspectives. And so I've certainly learned from several of my students. And my returning adult students bring a lot of different perspective too. And so I think I've learned a lot from my returning adult students too, just seeing their lives, seeing their expertise, workshopping things. And, it's great. And then once they're alumni, I stay in contact with as many of my alumni as I can. And it's just great to see them grow. And then be friends on the other side of it, right?
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about working here, is that every day I learn something, even when I'm not trying.
Right.
Whether it's like learning about these students and the different lives they've lived, and I know. For me, like one of them will, once in a while somebody will say, I couldn't have done it without you. I'm like, yeah, you could have. And I'm sure you've had students say that to you. And while that, I get how that feels, but it's fun to be able to make an impact, and I'm sure that you've made an impact in many of our students' lives. So thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it. And we can, if you don't have an answer to this question, I still want to ask it though. So our podcast is called Shockers Learning Out Loud, and we ask our adult learners what their learning out loud moment is. Have you had a learning out loud moment, or where you just went, oh my gosh, I never knew, or I never thought?
Yeah.
So I think traditional academic study has always been something that was my jam, right? Like, I recognize that it's not, like, there are challenges for some students, right? The curriculum, the system that we're in doesn't work for some people.
Right.
And I recognize that on this end, but it works for me, or at least it had worked for me, right? But then once I got into graduate study, it was just different. Like, my study skills worked through high school. My study skills worked through college, through my undergraduate degree program. But once I got to graduate school, it was like, you really have to set aside time, so much time to read and like do all of that stuff. And so that was a pretty shocking experience for me. And so just that time management, right? And so I certainly have empathy for my students that I serve now, knowing that, like, you got to develop these study skills. Your natural inclination, your natural ability can only take you so far.
Right.
Like, at some point in the process, you're going to have to.
We talk about time management all the time, especially our adult learners who are, doing so many things. I went to a conference recently, and they said they're students, their wives, their husbands, their partners, their caretakers, their employees, their employers, and they are students.
If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell her? I know, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? I think for me, if I could go back 18 years, man, I would be the person I needed as an adolescent. I would be sure to tell myself, you can do this.
Yes.
You do bring value to the table, even if you are low income or you're coming in first generation. I didn't know. I just always felt like I was coming from a deficit place, and I didn't bring anything to the table, and I was always the odd man out. Or, we sit around in meetings now, and I feel sometimes still that little girl is still kind of like,
do you really belong here? Yeah.
Do I add value? So I think, for me, going back, I would really nurture that you do belong here. There is a place for you, and past that is what now I can do for students who are in that position. So,
yeah, I mean, that resonates with me. Just that kind of affirming that you belong here, kind of thing. I think I had a lot of uncertainty about what path I wanted to take, especially as as an 18-year-old. I went to college. Like, I'm a first generation student, but like my parents really pushed going to college.
Yeah.
So I felt that pressure to go in and come to college, but I had no idea what to do.
Necessarily know how.
Right. How, and then beyond how, it's like, well, okay, so here I am.
Now what?
Now what?
I parked.
Yeah.
Where do I go? For real.
Yeah. Okay, I go to this class. Now that this class is over, now what? Where do I go? What do I do?
And especially too, I think I see myself in some of my students, right?
I do too.
With just the aptitude and the talent and whatever, and so you have all these paths you can take because you can do a lot, right? And so it's like, what, that almost is paralyzing.
Oh yeah. The overwhelming. I know I've kind of felt that way too, because like Amber and like you, there's this, oh, do I really belong here? My parents were farmers. I grew up on a dairy farm. What value could I honestly bring? And so, there is that. But there's you find your way here. And Amber and I have said that, you show up, you sit down, you show up, and we help you find, or somebody will help you find your way at Wichita State.
We talk a lot about just showing up, right? Like, sometimes you just want to disappear because you don't feel like you fit in, or maybe you made a mistake paying for this class and you're sitting there. But sometimes the bravest thing to do is just continue to show up, and that's what I did. And faculty and staff helped me find my way, and then I got my doctorate. Like, you can't show up every day and not have opportunities fall into your lap. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, something I try to do as a McNair director and just working with students is just to affirm that, right? You belong here. And, you have capacity, you have talent, you can take this opportunity and make something of it. And also, you don't have to take a path just because it's open in front of you. Like, you have the choice. Like, you can steer right at this point, and you can choose what you want to do. And so I think, just to circle back to that, what would I do, right? I would tell myself, you have a lot of opportunities. Steer, go where you like,
Have
lean
fun,
into that,
like,
Right. Yes.
What interests you?
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, thank you, Ashley. I think that about wraps it up for us. Real quickly, though, if a student says, oh, you know what? Hey, maybe I am interested. How can they reach you?
The application is open now. Will be open through the end of March. I think that's perfect timing to air, because I'm not gonna lie to you. Even though we have it open for a month, students usually fill out the application in the last 2 weeks. So go to the website. However, you can share my email.
Yes,
we can.
We will do that.
So they can reach out to me directly. I can share the application. We've tried to make the application process as painless as possible. There is an essay. I met with a student who was like, "Oh, at least there's not an essay." I was like, there is.
Oh, but there is. Yes.
Who's gonna tell them?
But it's only 300 to 500 words, and we're just asking you to outline what your goals are. How does graduate study fit into your goals? And we will, and so encourage. I mean, I would like to see everybody apply. I think, we work with all undergraduate students. I see a lot of returning adult students who come into the program just because, we talked about earlier, it's hard to know you want to go to a graduate program when you're early in your career. But a lot of my returning adult students are coming back and they're like, well, I'm here now. I might as well keep going.
That's it. That's kind of what I felt. Might as well keep going.
Yeah. And they come back with that clarity of goal. It's like, okay, I can achieve more. And so we can help you get there. We have a lot of returning adult students that we work with. And so I would encourage everybody to apply. I think I have 15 spots open, but apply. And we'll see what we can to get you there.
And just FYI, Ashley and I, we keep running into each other, and we do here in this building because she's over here in Grace Wilkie Annex where my office is. So we literally run into each other quite often. So phone number real quick, Ashley, do you have a phone number you want to share?
Yes, 316-978-3139.
Awesome. I think that about wraps it up.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thanks. It was good to see you again, my friend.
Thank you both.